Hi everyone, welcome to the Storied Church YouTube channel. My name is Jason. I'm so glad you are here with us today. If this is your first time checking out Storied Church, I just want you to know we're really glad that you are here. Thank you for bringing the body of Christ to wherever you are. Our hope is that this time that you spend with us, whether you watch the whole thing or you listen just for a few minutes, might be meaningful to you and meaningful to the community and the people that you share it with. But just wanted to extend our gratitude for taking space in your day to be present here with us. Like I said, if it is your first time, a great way to connect, go to storiedchurch.org/connect, and you get there really fast through the QR code that's on your screen. And also, if you just want a physical interaction, we'd love to meet you, and especially if you're not ready for church, we gather at Trackside Bottle Shop here in Mebane, Alamance County, every first and third Wednesday of the month at 6:30. Different crowd every time we gather, and so you'd be welcome at the table. And so I invite you to come and grab a seat, a drink, and join us at the table. Well, I invite us as we begin our gathering today to prepare yourself and to pray our Sunday collect together. And we'll begin by just taking a moment to breathe. So this is our third week in our Lenten season, out of the ashes, and so the weather in reading Job is somewhat right, and it fits for our journey together. And we've been talking about how Job is not merely just a story about a man who is suffering, but a man who is trying to understand who God is out of the suffering. He is deconstructing his faith, particularly the God that Job knew prior to his health and his wealth being taken away was a God of divine retribution, meaning that if you lived a pious life, God would bless you. And you would have wealth. And if you didn't live a pious life, God would curse you. And we are told at the beginning of this story that Job is the pious of pious man. He is probably the closest man to God. I mean, it's hyperbole in a lot of ways. And then he goes through this moment to where his family is taken away from him, and he is suffering. But he has done absolutely nothing wrong. And so he's left with this question of who is God now? If God is not a God of divine retribution, then who is God? And this, we're kind of all over the place in Job. We talked about his friends last week. But we kind of enter into this space in Job chapter 3, which is a really depressing chapter. But we enter into what Jewish people would understand as Shiva, a grieving period. And this is I love the idea of Shiva because it is a grieving, but it is not a collective. I mean, it is not a grief that is alone. Your friends come to be with you, not just to come and bring you a pie and leave. Like to literally, they will take a place at your house, like. If you're going through this grief, I'm going to go through it with you. I probably threw his friends somewhat under the bus last week, and so I will take them out from under the bus to say that they were good friends coming to spend this time with their friend as what Job was doing during this time of Shiva was lamenting. He was vocalizing that God, that he really felt that God had really dealt him a hard story and to walk through. and was saying things. That was the one that the part that I had Heather read was the nicer part, I think. There was parts that were like, I wish I would. Why did you let me be born? Like, why do I exist here? Often out of lament come, if you've ever, well, I think I say if we ever, I think we probably all have gone through really hard moments in life where we carry these deep questions. And a lot of these questions challenge dogmatic beliefs. And when I say dogmatic, like well-established belief. This is who I've understood God to be. God is no longer understood in that way to me because of the story that I'm living out. And a lot of times when you're walking through, with somebody else, people will look at you and say, why is God doing this to me? And you're like, oh, well, God is doing this to you, A, B, and C. And you begin to realize that they weren't asking you to actually answer the question. That's what Job is walking through. He says this, why is light given to one in misery and life to the bitter in soul who long for death, but it does not come, and dig for it more than for hidden treasures, who rejoice exceedingly and are glad when they find the grave. Why is light given to one who cannot see the way, whom God has fenced in? For my sighing comes like my bread, and my groanings are poured out like water. Truly the thing that I fear comes upon me, and what I dread befalls me. I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, but trouble comes. Shiva and grief is a vulnerable space. Why am I the one to go through this? Why am I the one with all these questions? I am not at ease, nor am I quiet. I have no rest, but trouble comes. We tend to carry a certain amount of discomfort around lamenting and asking questions, and I think it's a cultural thing that we don't want to burden anybody with our problems, and so a lot of what we do is we withhold and we hold on to things. And we are taught that lamenting and curiosity are negative behaviors and traits that don't often result in a positive outcome. So we don't want to burden somebody with our baggage. And so today I want to rethink what lament might mean for our faith journey. Particularly for when we're deconstructing our faith. I've thought a lot about what it might mean to lament past religious trauma and not to sweep it under the rug. And to acknowledge the way forward will never be the same. On a part, will never be the same. Will never be the same. I'm skipping around in my sermon, but I feel like I'll figure it out. But you might be in here thinking what a church should be because of how you've been shaped. And then it will never be that way again. We might have had feelings in a church space that were positive feelings, and we might be sitting here. I always make the joke about the fog machine. It's on back order. It will be here. It's coming. Yeah. But if you come out of those traditions, so much is gathered in our worship space of the lights and the fog machine. And so relearning a way of worshiping without those things is hard. And I think we have to lament and to acknowledge that. Lamenting is a way of, I think, letting go. Because in a lot of these, as I've thought about Job, I've thought a lot about in the past of places that we might have been hurt, we sometimes, I don't really hear people talk about this very much, but in those moments, our family, their brothers and sisters, moms and dads, there's friendships that used to be but are no longer. And even as the church has changed because of the pandemic. And I think we have to be careful when we think about a worshiping community and the kind of community that we are creating, because we have to ask ourselves, am I trying to recreate a worship setting from my past that no longer realigns with my values? I think about this person, I kind of had this epiphany a few years ago. I was a pastor at a 2-point charge, which means I was a pastor of 2 churches, and I decided to do, just like we do with our leadership team, like a retreat after church, and these are like people that want to be nice about them. They were nice people. Let me just put it that way. But we had a lunch afterwards, and I was going to lead them in kind of this what's called appreciative inquiry. What's going well? What is working with us? And then let's kind of work within all of that. And from right off the bat, what do you celebrate the church? And from right off the bat, this was a train wreck. It was not going to be appreciative inquiry, and this Margaret, who's a sweet lady, starts like, we used to have lots of children here and we don't have any, It's like, that's not appreciative. That's a negative. And she just kept she kept going this church used to be full, and I felt like what I was receiving was all of what the church used to be. And you're here now, looking at me, what are you going to do about it? How are you? And she just kept going. I'm just trying to move on. And then the women were just started cleaning up the food. And I'm like, wait, we haven't even started yet. We haven't even got to the good. And it was a train wreck. It just went downhill really, really fast. But I realized something about this church that was a force to be reckoned with, is that the 1970s were really good for them. Really good. It was a vibrant time. And I imagine for Margaret, her husband was alive, her kids were at home, the church was full, they were engaged in the life of the church, and now that no longer was. And so what Margaret was saying is, how do we recreate 1970s? How do we do that? What Margaret had never done or never been invited into is to lament that, that sucks. I don't know how else to shape it. You felt alive in 1970s and you don't feel that spirit anymore. And if you could just get back to that moment, then you could live. I think how much of sometimes we carry that spirit with us, that if I could just kind of recreate those magical moments in my life, then, Storied Church will be this amazing church. Then the power is in lamenting and saying, the church will never, ever be like those moments. That I can never go back. Lamenting, I think, is this powerful, powerful practice, because I think when you do that, you begin to see the beauty all around you. One of the things I love about lamenting is also collective grieving. We have no sense in our individualistic culture, but we try really hard to understand that nobody should lament alone. It is a collective pursuit. And so when we think about our life together, it is so incredibly and important that we are willing to hold space for lamenting. I love appreciative inquiry, but I also, I think sometimes, if I'm going to be critical of myself and Margaret, is sometimes pastors like me tell Margaret to shut up. Be quiet, please, because we're trying to create 2022, whatever the year, 2018 here, that's what we're trying to work with. And so, we've never let Margaret kind of speak, to kind of just, give air. Let the anger out, frustration. What does it mean to hold space for one another to lament collectively? We're so often can be really timid around when somebody is suffering and asking hard questions, because I know for me there is I'm Mr. Fix-It. Let me give you a 3-point sermon on how we can get out of this thing right now. Let me dig us out of this hole. And sometimes lamenting is just about holding space. And so today, I just want to take 5 minutes to ask. And I know this is a very vulnerable question to ask. And every time I ask questions, I'm just should you ask that? Is it going to go south? But maybe some of y'all will just feel bad enough for me. But what are you lamenting? Maybe at the church, maybe you're lamenting about a friendship. And maybe you don't want to say anything because you don't want to make someone else feel uncomfortable. But let's just name lamenting is a discomforting thing. And that this is a safe place to do such a thing. So, I'm going to be quiet. And what are you lamenting this morning?
One thing I learned in the last few years is that you can lament things that you wouldn't want back. People. I lament the days that I had all the answers from the Bible and everything was black and white. I didn't have questions. I lament the days where I just believed whatever I was told from the pulpit. I lament the friends and family that I've lost. But I don't want any of those things back.
Thank you.
I've been grieving family lately, just from the loss, even though there are several I've lost them in my life, and God's answered a lot of questions for me in the past week, and I'm very happy. So.
Thank you, Rodney.
And I've been lamenting my brother as I knew him, and now with the traumatic brain injury. I lament all that history is gone for him. It's not gone for me, but it's gone for him. And that, he doesn't know us anymore. That we're just such nice people that come to visit him.
Thank you.
I just want to lament how things, didn't quite turn out, at least in my first 60 years, how I thought it would, and I thought, well, is that bad? Actually, no, not really. I think it's good. And like Heather said, I don't want some of that back. I don't think maybe we didn't have this or this or this or this or this. And where I used to, I thought, well, I didn't do something right. I don't have a big boat. I don't have this. I don't have that or whatever. But then makes me sort of appreciate the people around me. You know, we left a very large church in Wake County, and we moved to this area, and you know, went from a church with thousands of members to, you know, this crowd. So, and I love it. I mean, I thought, well, is this going to be fun? And I thought, yeah, it's going to be great. You know, we're going to be involved with starting something new and sort of, you know, grieving that stuff in the past, but I don't necessarily want it back. I want to turn the page and move on. So,
Thank you.
I lament relationships that have gone, like friends that I can't contact anymore, or couples that divorce and you lose touch with somebody else. I always feel longing for that. Like when I meet people in a good relationship, I love it. It's like they're severed from my life. And yeah, and even the previous church, like when I see stuff online, I miss the people that I knew there. So I miss the relationship I had in that church. And some of the things my kids went through there make me sad.
Yeah.
But it's probably grieving in it.
Thank you, Krishna.
I'll just say that, you know, everyone here knows that Laurel has had several surgeries for her, it's called an ABM, but it's something that's chronic. And she'll always have. And I think that through that, I've just found myself just asking God, like, what do I do with these things that I did not ask for? Right? Like, what do we do with the things that we didn't ask for? And that's just something that I've been wrestling with. But, like, through all of that, I think with this community has been just so important with the way that you all have loved our children. But yeah, that's just a question that I've kind of just been wrestling with and kind of lamenting and holding.
No sorry needed. Just don't get me started.
I'm not sure where the overlap of the word lament with grief might be. I think in terms of grief more than laments, but I realize they're subtly different. And the stages of grief, so maybe there are stages of lament. In some ways, we've been talking about if it's possible to grieve the future, and I've heard this a couple of ways, the future that will unlikely ever be. And in the past, we've had a couple of friends, women, who went through divorces that were, well, how can a divorce not be upsetting? But the comments that came from both of them in various ways is lamenting that they would never be able to have a 40 or 50-year marriage, that if they ever found a relationship, it would last as long as they did from that age on. But it's helped us to think about not only the great blessing that our marriage is, but then we can look at other things to grieve. I mean, we realize as we get older, our bodies won't allow us to do the things that we hoped, wanted to be able to do. Because we've made moves like Tim has talked about, we won't have deep, lasting friendships with people that, I get kind of annoyed with pointless nostalgia at times, but there's also something that is very warm about being with somebody who knows you from 40 years ago. Escapades that you got into, the things that you did that you wouldn't want anyone else to know. Those things will never be.
Thank you, Charles. As we will begin our transition to to the Eucharist. I'm thinking about ways that I'm lamenting as some people think we're a non-denominational church, and so sometimes I'm like, well, okay, if that's you need that, then we're not. But we are a Methodist. We are a Methodist community. And so if you're finding that out for the first time, I'm sorry. But there are, the church is heavily divided, and many churches are leaving the denomination for either to be on their own or for a new, more conservative denomination over human sexuality. And I'm grieving that the churches I came from in Florida I could never go back to. I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back because they're a different denomination too. I have seen the hurt and harm that theology has done to people in my life, but there's something in me that wants to go home, but I never can in the way that I would want to. I mean, I would have to lie to go back, and I cannot. But that's hard, It's hard. Well, if you didn't share today, that is okay. I think Lent is a prime season, and today is the weather outside couldn't be even better. Could not be better for us for lamenting. But I think it is to me, it's a purging practice of being able to name collectively where we are lamenting, grieving, and not feel so alone. I hope that as you leave today, you feel less alone than you did when you have come in. And I also want to affirm that it is okay to feel discouraged, angry, resentful, frustrated, anxious, and to acknowledge our feelings and to find ways that we might collectively heal together. During the season of Lent, we often feast on less than appetizing bread. But I think this is a recognition and a realization that of our collective lament together, one that we all partake in during this season. And all God's people said. Well, I invite us into Holy Communion.